Hello, I'm Emma-Louise Coffey and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. With fertiliser costs going through the roof, Signpost Programme Advisor Seamus Kearney provides tips for strategic use of slurry to minimise the requirement for chemical nitrogen in the first round this spring. And I first asked Seamus about the soil fertility status of Irish dairy soils.
So soil fertility on dairy farms nationally, we're looking at about 63% of dairy farms are at 6.2, which is kind of optimum and above for lime, and about 50% of the P and K levels are at index 3 and 4 on dairy farms, which is kind of optimum of where we'd like them to be for optimum grass growth.
So farmers have made an improvement in terms of soil fertility, but there's still a way to go, Seamus.
Absolutely, and I suppose the one thing is the P and K levels were dropping in general on dairy farms until 2017. They've turned the corner since 2017, where they're starting to lift a bit again at the minute. And lime has started to improve as well in the last couple of years, the pH. But at the same time, like if you take all of them into account, lime, P and K, only 1 in 5 acres on dairy farms are optimum for all three at the same time.
And Seamus, if we consider where we are now, early January, a lot of farmers have completed soil sampling and they have, a set of results sitting in front of them. It might be a mammoth task to get through everything, but, where do farmers start?
Yeah, the starting point, I would say, Emma-Louise, is to look at the lime. Look, that's the one to start working on straight away, because I suppose the one thing with lime is lime is a huge return on investment. It gives a 400% return on investment. And if we told people that we could get them this white powder that would give them a 4% return on investment, lime probably isn't the first one they think of. So a huge return on investment in lime. And really what the lime will do, it will help to release nitrogen. So by getting the lime right, you can release up to 60 units of nitrogen per year from the ground. And it also helps to improve phosphorus automatically by releasing available phosphorus out of the ground. So lime is definitely a starting point. So what I'll be saying to farmers is look at their soil samples, get a map. If it's a case of getting your aerated maps, and marking on the aerated maps which fields are low on lime. So at least that you target lime on those fields first of all, to start releasing phosphorus and nitrogen to help reduce the fertiliser bills.
And I suppose not to underestimate that, Seamus, like what you're saying is for every €1 you spread on lime, there is going to be a €400 return in terms of the benefits that you're seeing within your grassland systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the prices where they are at the minute, Emma-Louise, like a load of lime is a 20 tonne load of lime is about €500. We're looking at over about $9.50 for a tonne of protected urea. The load of lime will probably give the same kind of response as of about 70% of a tonne of protected urea, but it'll keep giving that return year on year once the lime is right on the farm. So it's the continuous release of the nitrogen and getting the phosphorus right at farm level.
And looking then to timing of lime spreading, now you highlight that a very high proportion of farmland has optimum lime or optimum pH. So when for farmers who are looking at low lime or low pH on farm, when should they be going with that lime?
Yeah, well, I suppose the good thing with lime is it can be spread at any time. The only thing I suppose to bear in mind is where lime is going out on silage ground this time of year in the springtime. If the ground isn't bare and it kind of sticks to the grass, it comes back into the silage, you can have a problem with preserving the silage in the pit. So maybe on some silage ground, maybe better to leave it until after the silage got to the back end of the year and put it out at that stage. But on the grazing paddocks where some of them need lime at this stage, no harm to put it out, and the rain should wash it in, that it would be washed into the ground, that it won't be there to taint the grass when the cows are grazing it. And when we mentioned 60%, 63% of farms are optimum on dairy farms for lime, to grow clover, which is another way of reducing your overall nitrogen input on the farm, we need to be above 6.5 pH, and only 40% of dairy land is above 6.5 pH. So only 40% of dairy farms are at the correct lime status in order to be able to grow clover.
So farmers need to potentially push it a little bit further if clover is part of their system.
Absolutely, and if we're looking at clover, I suppose the optimum we're looking for is to get the lime status or the pH above 6.5, and to get the P and K levels at index 3 or greater on land in order to get optimum grass growth and also to be able to establish clover at farm level.
And if we think about this time of year, nitrogen is to the forefront and how we manage nitrogen in the spring. You mentioned, the cost of protected urea at $9.50 a tonne. I was speaking to an industry source yesterday and they were talking about, it has risen to that level and straight urea was $9.50, as they were selling it. That puts the spotlight on slurry really. And people are accounting more and more for the nutrients that slurry can provide. If you consider that, give us the strategy for spring applications of slurry. How can we best get value from it, Seamus?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing is 1,000 gallons of slurry for the coming spring. We're looking is worth about €40. So €40 per 1,000 gallons. Now, about 3/4 of the value is in the P and the K. So the first strategy is any fertilizer really going out for January, February really is going to be in the form of slurry this year. And 2,500 gallons of slurry spread with low emission slurry spreading will give about 23 units of nitrogen as well as the P and the K per acre. So that's meeting the nitrogen requirements for the crop for January, February. And the slurry should be able to cover about half to 60% of the farm on most dairy farms. Ideally, you'd like to try and target it back at ground. There will be silage ground because just to recycle the P and K value and to keep the P and K levels right on the silage ground. For the ground then that doesn't get slurry in January, February, we're talking about maybe 23. This will be good early ground. We're talking about maybe 23 units of nitrogen then for February, and we'll be holding off then to March to be going about 40 units then by kind of mid to late March to try and get grass growing on dry ground. On heavier type ground, we're looking really at about 40 to 45 units of nitrogen by kind of the middle of April. Whatever slurry has to be put out to keep on top of the tanks in January, February, and then topping it up to the 45 unit level, the slurry. So maybe another 20 units where the slurry has gone out, and maybe 40 to 45 units of protected urea on ground that hasn't got slurried in kind of March, April period.
And talk through then the chemical fertiliser as you see it, where there's no slurry has gone out. You're recommending that 23 units in February. What sort of product is best to use in that scenario?
Yeah, well, if we look at the products there, look, they've all gone up in value a huge amount this year. Like protected urea, I suppose one of the big advantages of protected urea or urea, they're going to give better value. They're about nearly 25% cheaper than CAN type products at the minute on a kilo of nitrogen basis. So they're substantially cheaper. And the other big thing then is protected urea from trial work done in Johnstown Castle over a protracted period of time by maintaining the value of the nitrogen and by reducing ammonia losses is leading to more available nitrogen being available at farm level. So essentially really what it means is that 8 tons of protected urea can grow the same amount of grass as 9 tons of ordinary urea. So it's given about a 12-13% bounce over time on grass grown protected urea over urea, because it's reducing ammonia losses, which is actually retaining more of the nitrogen for the farmer to actually use to grow grass. So definitely looking ahead this year, if we were looking at all types of fertilizer, value for money, we'd put protected urea number 1, urea number 2, and your CAN type products are number 3 after that. So we would be strongly recommending, and I know it's an availability issue in some parts of the country, but where available, protected urea is the cheapest form of available nitrogen for the springtime.
I suppose just to reiterate that point, Seamus, you're saying that your protected urea compared with your standard urea product is going to lead to a 12 to 13% increase in grass production. Or if you want the same level of grass growth, you can spread less protected urea.
So bring it back to in that one, Emma-Louise, like 35 units of protected urea can kind of give you the same response as 40 units of ordinary urea. So it's giving an extra growth increase, but as well as that, it's also helping to reduce our ammonia emissions, which we have a target for the country as well. And compared to CAN type products, it's reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It's 4 times more environmentally friendly than our CAN type products. So it's given an extra yield. It's cheaper for the farmer, and it's also good for the environment. So the protected urea product is winning all around.
So, I'm hearing the benefits from you, Seamus, but, there are a lot of farmers who still haven't made the jump from urea to protected urea. What are their concerns?
Yeah, I suppose the big issue, like if we look at last year, what we sprayed fertilizer-wise, about 22% of the fertilizer used, straight nitrogen, was urea, and about 5 to 6% was protected urea. So almost 30% was some form of urea. I suppose the target for by 2030 is we need to get to 2/3 of all our fertilizer use is protected urea. The big concerns for farmers, from feedback we're getting from farmers, is the actual supply of the product in the first place. But it's like anything, it's going to take a little bit of time to take off. But if farmers go into their suppliers today looking for the product next week, they probably won't get it. So it's asking in plenty time that the product is there when you actually need it available for your own farm. So it seems to be a supply and demand issue to get that balanced out at the minute, Emma-Louise.
And looking then to another point that you made, you talk about value for money. And if we consider the price of a tonne of CAN at the moment, it's $6.50, and the tonne of urea, it's $9.50. So, if you look at the products in isolation, the CAN is a cheaper product, but from what you're saying, it's 25% cheaper. So just, I guess, if you could step us through that to break down exactly where the differences lie.
Yeah, we'll just say take CAN at a price there of kind of 700 kind of mark. You have 270 kilos of nitrogen per tonne of CAN. So your €700 divided by 270 kilos of nitrogen, that's working out at about $2.59 per kilo of nitrogen. If we look at our protected urea product, we'll say take a $9.50 figure. There is 460 kilos of nitrogen in a protected urea product where there isn't any sulfur or K involved in it. So you're dividing your €950 per tonne by your 460 kilos of nitrogen. So that's coming out at about €2.06 per kilo of nitrogen. So we're talking about €2.06 per kilo of nitrogen for protected urea and almost $2.60 per kilo of nitrogen for the CAN. And that's sometimes between a 20 and 25% extra cost to go to CAN product than your protected urea type product. So you have to bring it back per kilo of nitrogen to be able to compare one product versus the other, because you're really getting almost 1.5 times your nitrogen in your protected urea, in your tonne of protected urea, than you are in the CAN. And the protected urea is reducing our ammonia losses, so it's maintaining more nitrogen available to the plant, less loss, because any loss of any product is a loss to the farmer's pocket at the end of the day. So the protection on the urea is helping more of the nitrogen to be retained in the system and making the protected urea product on a used basis actually cheaper than ordinary urea for the farmer.
And I think it's a really useful exercise to have talked through that, Seamus. As you say, it's the price per tonne divided by the kilograms of nitrogen per tonne.
In each tonne, yeah.
And farmers just need to, I suppose, think about that once they're getting their quotes from their merchants. On a recent episode of The Environment Edge, Cathal and Deirdre would have spoken with Mark Plunkett, and he explained this rapid rise in nitrogen. There's a lot of factors at play. It's not just one thing. There's the price of natural gas, export bans from places like China and Russia, and also then additional costs associated with freight and shipping. For farmers who don't have nitrogen in the yard at the moment, Seamus, they're heading into the onset of grass growth. Where do they go from here?
Well, I suppose the starting point, Emma-Louise, is to work out especially how much nitrogen you need for the first 2 rounds. So as we said earlier on there, the slurry should be able to cover half the first round at 2,000 gallons per acre on most dairy farms. So it's having enough nitrogen for the 23 units for the first round and having enough then for the 40 units for the second round in March. So it's kind of working out how many tonne of product that you need for the first 2 rounds and getting that product into the air to have it available, because it's important to be able to keep the grass growing when the cows are freshly calved, to have enough grass out there to get cows at their optimum production levels. Now, I suppose availability is going to be the issue. I suppose if we're looking at a price point, we're then looking at protected urea being the cheapest on a nitrogen availability basis, followed by urea, followed by CAN. So look, we would be recommending the protected urea product where available and can be got. Failing that, look, if you can't get protected urea, I suppose urea is your next bet, followed by CAN type products then after that. And I suppose another consideration, Emma-Louise, is especially going into the high fertiliser price for 2022 is because every farm has to look at the stocking rate on the farm for the year going forward. Like I suppose with expansion since 2015, stock numbers have increased in a lot of farms. Is there room maybe for culling out the poorest performing 5% of the herd? They're probably adding a lot of pressure to the stocking rate, to sheds, to labour, but are they increasing the profitability of the whole pile on dairy farms? So it's probably another point worth looking at. Maybe look some of the poorer stock, maybe the worst performing 5% on the herd, could they maybe be culled out to make room and leave the better stock reach their potential on dairy farms?
So really, really great points there. As you say, right now farmers should focus on the first and second round, get in touch with the merchant and get the level of nitrogen you need in the yard. And I suppose another positive is, as we look across the countryside at the moment, there's a good level of grass production and relatively high on average winter growth rates. So there is a good supply of grass on farms to feed animals this spring. Thank you, Seamus.
Thank you very much, Emma-Louise.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Seamus Kearney for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.